Okay, here are three big stories and then a couple little tiny stories at the very end, but three big stories. So the first is this. Russia's central bank said that those with existing foreign currency accounts will only be able to withdraw $10,000 in US dollars or euros until March 9th, 2025. Now, this is a really important story for a reason. We're talking about the health of the Russian economy, and it's not in the greatest shape. And that they're trying to, get a hold of or restrict the people getting a hold of US dollars in foreign accounts or euros tells you like they're not doing that to rubles. And that's because if I were to I give you a choice. You can have 1,000 US dollars or you can have 1,000 US dollar equivalent in rubles. Which would you take? Now you would take the dollars. Why? Because we don't know what's going to happen to the ruble. The sky could fall and it could all come crashing down, right? And so people are taking that money in dollars or in euros, and that's becoming problematic. They, as much as the Russians talk about how we don't need the US dollars, we're going to trade in our own rubles and whatever. Nobody really wants to trade in rubles if they can avoid it. Okay. The central bank first introduced the restrictions in March of 2022 after the US and EU halted cash transfers of dollars and euros to Russia. At the same time, private customers withdrew 9 billion from Russian accounts in February of 2022. In its latest statement, Russia's central bank said that those with existing foreign currency accounts will be able to withdraw only up to 10,000 US dollars or euros until March 9th of 2025. Any remaining funds will be available only in rubles. Now, I guess you could get the rubles and then convert it to like gold or something, but you definitely don't want to hang on to it in rubles. Since the export ban on cash began in March 2022, Russia has imported an estimated, that is, they've brought in 2.27 billion in dollars and euros in those funds from countries that have not sanctioned Moscow. They've bought it from them in order to have this reserve of these currencies. That tells you what they think of their own currency. Okay, big story number two. The 24th meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contract Group, which takes place in person, Ramstein Air Base, has begun. We're grateful to our partners from about 50 partner countries for their unwavering support. So here's Zelensky talking about how he announced at this, among other things, that Russia has lost 6,000 soldiers either killed or wounded during a month of Ukraine military operations in the Kursk region. He also said that Ukraine now controls up to 1,300 square kilometers of Russian territory. So the kilometers is not new, but the 6,000 soldiers, what does that mean? Like, to give you some perspective of that, now Russia has lost about 33,000 soldiers in over a course of about a month, and about 6,000 of those are coming from Kursk, which means about 18% of the losses of Russia come from the Kursk region, about a little less than 20% coming from there. Okay, now what is coming from the Ramstein format? We'll have the UK supplying lightweight multi-role missiles, and that's worth about 162 million worth of those missiles. And so thank you to Britain for that. The US has announced their military aid package for Ukraine, 250 million, and it's coming with these RIM-7 missiles for air defense, Stinger missiles, ammunition for HIMARS, 155 and 105 artillery ammunition, javelins, Bradleys, and it goes on. But there's no ATACMS, right? There's that's not what they really need because they're kind of afraid that Ukraine is going to strike Russia with ATACMS, and they don't want to seem to provide that. Meanwhile, Iran will allocate two types of short-range ballistic missiles to Russia. So Russia's being resupplied with ballistic missiles. So it's okay to hit ballistic missiles inside Ukraine, but it's not okay for Ukraine to hit targets in Russia. There's no change to our policies one way or another to speak to, says John Kirby just within the last 24 hours. The European Commission will also allocate another 40 million euros to Ukraine for repair of energy infrastructure. The EU allocated 35 million to Ukraine and 5 million to Ukrainians in Moldova for winter support. The EU will use these funds to repair buildings, ensure power and heating in Ukraine, and provide shelter and essential services for vulnerable refugees in Moldova. In Germany, Zelensky held a meeting with Olaf Scholz. I'm grateful for the comprehensive support, especially military assistance provided to Ukraine since the start of the full-scale invasion. Grateful for the leadership in strengthening air defense. And props to Germany for that. Recently, they've given more Irish teas, and he met with Boris Pistorius at Ramstein Air Base. We discussed the current situation on the battlefield, ongoing Russian attacks on our energy infrastructure, which didn't have to happen. If they had the air defense, if they were able to strike at where the air defense or where the missiles are coming from, if they could have done these things, their energy infrastructure wouldn't be in such terrible shape going into the winter. But he's grateful to Germany and particularly for the help and strength, protection for our skies. So what is Germany providing beyond tanks and other things along those lines? So Germany will supply Ukraine with 12 more Panzerhaubitze 2000 self-propelled artillery systems. So again, and it was just last week that they were talking about some more Irish Ts, and Germany has been there supplying Patriot batteries. So good on Germany. Okay, Canada. Canada will provide Ukraine with over 80,000 CRV-7 rocket motors for unguided rockets, 1,300 warheads. Canada will also send 29 decommissioned M113 chassis and 64 Coyote LAV armored vehicles. So thank you to Canada. Okay, so big story number 3 is the West buys oil and gas from Russia. Russia buys media to destroy the West. We got to stop this madness and sanction the entire regime. But the big story here is the media. So yesterday, this big story broke where the DOJ alleges that Russia funded U.S. media company linked to right-wing social media stars. Now, that does not mean that these guys were necessarily Kremlin plants. Um, I don't know the degree to which they even knew that the Kremlin was the ones backing them. That's an open question. But they are spreading Russian talking points. So I'm not sure what's happening, whether they were influenced by, say, this, or whether they were already saying this and Russia just propelled it. I'm not sure how that's all working, but it's bad. It's still pushing Russian talking points. Now, it's not just these guys. It's not just Tim Pool and these others making that 400,000 a month pushing Russian disinformation. There's also 2,800 others, according to the FBI, that are American paid influencers that Russia is using to propagate their messages. So, yeah, that's bad. Now, Russia is not happy about those restrictions, and they say that they're going to restrict U.S. media outlets over the sanctions that were on RT. But they admitted, like, we can't do it pound for pound. The United States indicted 2 RT employees and sanctioned its top editors on Wednesday, accusing them of trying to influence the upcoming U.S. presidential election. Quote from Dmitry Peskov, the Putin's spokesperson. A like response is not possible. There is no state news agency in the US and there's no state TV channel in the US. That's right. We don't do it that way where this is the official state party line, right? We don't do that. The closest we come is like a PBS, maybe Radio Free Europe, which is sponsored by the US government, but it's its own agency, but but it's not exactly pound for pound. But there will certainly be measures here that will restrict media disseminating their information, he said, without specifying what it will be. So that's just Russia talking tough in order to talk tough. Okay, last few things. These are just some interesting articles. So Vucic from Serbia decided he's not going to the BRICS summit. He may be pro-Russian, but he's not dumb enough to attend the BRICS summit. Serbian leader Vucic said he can't accept Putin's invitation to attend the BRICS summit next month. Okay, Lithuania has completed its installation of hedgehogs and dragon's teeth opposite the Queen Louise Bridge, connecting the country to Russia. In addition, the measures it also plan to install backup obstacles on the pillars, namely a set of metal beams at the ford. The enemy will also be hampered not only by a steep slope of the river, but also by mines, dragon teeth, Czech hedgehogs, barbed wire. It's important to be prepared for anything that may happen. So that's what Lithuania is doing across the river from Kaliningrad, where they border Russia. So it's like they're doing that for a reason. Everyone, like all the Baltic states, feel like something's coming, and I hope nothing comes, but That's what they're doing. Meanwhile, the Kyrgyz Foreign Ministry has officially confirmed the removal of the Taliban terrorist group from the list of banned organizations, and Russia's working on that. I don't think it's going to go well for them when they get there. Meanwhile, here's a Russian propagandist saying this, on state TV, by the way, let at least one of our nuclear missiles hit Washington and London. Let 3 billion users see it on YouTube. YouTube's banned, isn't it, in Russia? See it on YouTube, what the destruction of the capitals of Britain and the United States looks like. It will all burn in flames. It will burn so beautifully that the world will be horrified. That's what should be done, according to this Russian propagandist. So I'll leave you with this. Russia is an imperialist state. I don't think there's any way around that. This is how Russia thinks. This is how Russia acts. It's an imperialist state. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.